Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this February 15th regularly scheduled Newmarket School Board meeting here back in the town chambers for one more time. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, head right into any board, First, Andrew Hammaker is an excused absence for tonight. Head into any board comments, committee updates.
I had a meeting today with the Health Benefits Committee, and we met with the current health insurance company. They did a presentation, and we have 2 more companies coming to present in the next few weeks. That's it.
Great, thank you. And head into student rep report, please, Sean.
Okay. So another very weak report for this week. Didn't get much out from a bunch of the clubs, and obviously athletics are coming to a close for winter sports as we're entering the spring season. So the boys basketball team ended with a record of 6-12, and sadly will not be making the playoffs. They were the 17th seed, so they just missed out. They had a great season. However, the girls ended off their season with a 14-4 record and have earned themselves a playoff game at home against Epping on Tuesday. If they win that one, they'll also have another home game. So that's great. JV boys aren't done, though. They have a tournament in Farmington. Not sure when that is, but that's coming up. Starts tomorrow. For track, the girls got 3rd at states, and Alana Hagen was a state champion. And that's all I have for sports. Snowman competition is still up and running for the National Honor Society. We've only had a couple submissions. Obviously, there hasn't been a lot of snow. Pretty sure we were supposed to get 7 inches, but apparently they decided to knock that back down to 0. So that was a pretty frustrating day for me. I was expecting a snow day, and then I woke up to nothing. The senior class. Hey, it's not your fault.
I'm going to be talking about that.
I just woke up and I was like, I hope Mr. Allen gives us the day off. And I was like, oh, guess there's no snow outside, so I won't be getting that. Yeah. The senior class is holding a bake-off. That's going to be tomorrow, 5:30 to 7. $5 entry, you get 3 tickets, and you can place them in for whichever desserts you like. I'm pretty sure we have about 15 entries for baked goods, which is nice. We just need people to go. And lastly, the last thing I have is the Chocolate Fest is going to be held on the 21st at 6 p.m. There's going to be lots of music being played and also a lot of chocolates available for people who, like chocolate. I'm going. I'll probably go for the chocolate. So,
Who needs a reason?
Yeah, that's all I have, though. Not a lot
Awesome.
going on right now.
Great, thank you very much. And over to you, Todd, Superintendent
Sure.
report.
Well, since Sean brought it up, I will take a second to just talk about weather. It's kind of comical. If many of you may realize, Monday, the forecast as of noon was the big storm that everybody was concerned about. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I was the one that pushed pause on it for the rest of the region and said, hey guys, it looks like the system is changing. Let's wait until 4 o'clock when the emergency management people do their final weather report. And sadly, as Sean pointed out, the weather report was, hey, this storm is staying south of us. You should all have school tomorrow. So the few schools that canceled did not wait to get that information. And so they ended up having no school. And as Sean pointed out, it wasn't a great day for snowman
So
making.
regionally, people should be upset with you, not just
So
locally.
really, it's not just Newmarket that should be upset with Mr. Allen. It should be the entire seacoast who
Nice.
pushed pause on it. So anyway, I apologize for being the responsible individual. Anyway, no. So I did want to just remind people that typically, in fact, I've already started getting some people reaching out to me for tomorrow because there is a very light storm expected tonight, wanting to know when am I going to make a decision on that. I typically, unless it's like Unless it's like a big deal storm that people are saying, this is a surefire thing, I'm not generally going to make a decision until 5:30 in the morning. And so typically what I do, just to remind people, I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm talking to Mr. Mulaski from the DPW, I'm talking to area superintendents, and then I make the decision. And if there's a delay or cancellation, there will be a message that people receive by 5:30.
I think
So sadly,
I
Sean's
wake up
excited.
every morning.
You're
and I
excited to
check
make
my
snowmen.
email.
He's excited to make snowmen is all it is. He doesn't
So
want
really,
yeah,
so
let's
yeah,
go.
My
I-
alarm
for
sets
your
5:30.
sake, I'll cross my fingers and hope for snow tonight, so just so you can have that.
Oh, I'm praying.
I would like that for you. Okay, changing away from weather, I did want to just mention today was SRO Appreciation Day. It's a nationally recognized Appreciation Day. Just wanted to take a minute to say thank you to Gary Gott and Rich McFadden for the great work they do as SROs in our two buildings. You know, Newmarket is very fortunate to have two such dedicated resource officers, and quite frankly, a really positive relationship with the local police department. They're just very supportive of the schools. So thank you to everybody for their great work on that. Next thing I wanted to mention is a couple of things we're working with the town on to collaborate, because one of the things that we're really trying to do is to have a good, positive working relationship with the town. People in the town will be hearing soon about a master plan visioning session that's underway, that's being planned. They're going to be using the junior, senior high school for that event, and so we're really encouraging community endeavors to take advantage of the use of our facilities, but definitely trying to be supportive there. And another endeavor we have going on, for those of you who don't know, 2024 is the 100th anniversary of the high school, and so it's a big historical celebration, and so the Newmarket Historical Society is working with us. They have an exhibit planned, which will probably be launched in the fall, because we're going to tie it into some educational programming, but they're all already planning, community events for people to come in. One of the neat things at the deliberative session, Phil, you introduced me to your friend, Mr. Pike, there, great guy, but he asked a question about, hey, is there going to be tours here? And I anticipate, us having tours of the new building and tying it into some of that historical observance, but also some really nice educational programming in our classrooms for kids, as well as available to the community. So it's really great, and I would thank Chris and John Carmichael. They're the ones that are doing the lion's share of the work on that. Appreciate it. Next thing I wanted to mention was Newmarket has been in a cooperative football arrangement with Epping now, going on, this is 16 years, and every year we renew the contract. We just finished reviewing it with Epping yesterday, the MOU, I should say, not the contract. I did want to point out a couple of things. You may recall about a month ago we had some community correspondence raising some concerns regarding sort of that relationship we have. We were able to review an awful lot of stuff and institutionalize some agreements around relationships between athletic directors, relationships between trainers, and relationships with coaches, and sort of that oversight process. So I'm pleased to say I feel very good that we're heading in a really good direction. And I would just mention to the board, probably sometime in the next month, I will put that MOU in front of you after I've finalized it with Epping for your approval. So anyway, so that's been going on. But again, I think it's a really positive relationship. And frankly, Newmarket kids who want to play football would not have a chance were it not for that, because there is no other game in town, as it were. Next thing I wanted to mention, just as a positive, if you haven't had a chance to check it out on our website, thank you to Tim Kremen for putting together a time-lapse video of the playground construction project. It's kind of neat if you want to watch it from start to finish. It's about a 4.5-minute video, and it shows the whole thing from when the old playground was there to its dismantling all the way to the completion of the project. It's kind of fun to watch it, watch the transition take place. So thanks again to Tim for that. And then last thing I wanted to mention, and it's more of a future mention for the board, we've talked to you about some of the cybersecurity work that Jason Carey and his team has been doing in the district. As of March 6th is the deadline by which we'll be switching to a multi-factor authentication system for all of our users, and the board, you're all users. So I have convinced Jason to postpone the blocking of your access until the March 7th board meeting, and they will be here on March 7th to help you guys set up multi-factor authentication. And while they're at it, we are also increasing password length up to 14 characters. So, so yeah, I know, Phil, you'll have to have, yeah.
One, 2, 2.
But anyway, those are both things that are being strongly recommended to us through all of our cybersecurity auditing. It's actually, it's funny, it's sort of like the lottery odds. The more numbers you have to get right, the more less likely you are to win. So like if you have 14 numbers, the math is quite dramatic between a 6 or 7 character password versus 14. So 14 is like, it's like a 1 in like 55 million chance that they can pick your password, and it takes like 3,000 years for a bot to be able to go through all the permutations of the password to potentially. So that's why we're doing it. It's a security thing. Anyway, expect those things coming up.
Password.
I know what I'm doing tonight. I'm changing all my passwords.
Go
Go ahead.
For multi-factor authentication, what are they doing? Obviously, probably a significant chunk of our student body doesn't have cell phones. How does that work?
The multi-factor authentication is going for what we're calling the high-value targets. At this point, students are not included in it. Not to say they're not valuable; they're very valuable. I didn't want to. That's the term they
I'm
use
really
in the
sorry for
cyber
putting
world.
you in that box.
We really value you, Sean. We do.
So all of our staff will be given the option to either use a cell phone, or they'll be given what's called a YubiKey, which is a token that you can use when you log in. For students, they will be being encouraged to increase password complexity, and we'll do some education. But to that point, it would be very challenging to have all the students go to that system. Okay. So it's just staff at this point.
Is it this year?
For staff, yes, effective March 6th.
I just didn't know if I was going to. Probably not.
Maybe all the
To be
seniors should do it
determined.
this year.
It probably will not be, in worst case scenario, you might have to go to a 14 character password, but that hasn't
For
been.
1 month.
You can make it work. You're a smart guy.
And a couple questions. For the
Sure.
7th, do you want us here earlier so we have time to go through that process?
What's going to happen is Jason will have multiple members of his team here, and it's a relatively quick process. So he's thinking, 10 minutes max. And obviously we would have to do it again after the election, because we could very well have
2 new members.
2 new members
But
possibly.
I assume you do that with them
Right.
in the office or whatever.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, great.
Okay.
And then I did have a question about the MOU. How long are those generally?
1 year, 1 year at a time.
Oh, okay. I don't recall seeing it before. That's what I was.
Well, I to be honest with you, one of the things that has been in the review is that when I asked for a copy of the MOU, discovered that it had been quite a few years since that process had occurred.
Okay.
Part of it, what happened was during the pandemic, there was no football. And so I think, I don't know what happened in the shuffle, but yes, the MOU states that by April 30th of the preceding year, both boards will have seen it and approved it. So that will happen this year and moving forward.
Great. Well, we found it and we're fixing it, so
Yep.
that's all that matters. And well, now you're done with superintendent report, I presume.
Yep, I'm good.
Head right into presentations. First up is a administrative organizational change that you're
Yeah.
considering, and you'd like to.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Tell us
there's a memo in your packet. You may recall in 2022, when we had a number of departures in administrative leadership, the decision was made, actually prior to my involvement, to convert what had been the assistant superintendent position to a director of curriculum instruction and assessment. And I think it was the right decision at the time, because it did, the candidate pool was shallow at the time, and I think by going for a director level position, the certification requirements were not as stringent, and therefore it allowed us to hire Patty Wands in that position. That being said, one of the first things that Patty and I began talking about was wanting to kind of build some bench depth, if you will, in the district, and wanting to have at least one other person that had superintendent credential in the SAU. And so Patty set to work over the last year and a half to do all the the coursework she needed to do, and just as of December was notified that she'd completed the program and had received her superintendent credential. So moving forward, and we don't need to make any decision tonight, I just wanted to put this up for just to let you know where my thinking is at. When administrative contracts are before you, I would like to present a contract for Patty to take on the role of assistant superintendent. She would continue with all of her curriculum, instruction, and assessment duties, but it will allow me to utilize her in more operational type functions like, union things and contracts and stuff like that.
This is a kind of weird situation where the board has no real authority over who Todd hires or what position he hires him for. However, we do have the responsibility to approve contracts. So in that regard, we do have some input. Excuse me. And then I thought we may want to give you a little bit of background, and you folks might recall better than I, but a few years ago, I think there was some contention around having an assistant superintendent versus a director of curriculum, and I think it went back and forth
It did.
once or twice. So you may get some community feedback about it.
Yeah. I mean, I am familiar with the history. I know back in 2016, I believe it was, when Meredith Nadeau became superintendent here, there was an assistant superintendent position that was created at that point, and then that position went away, I want to say the next year, and then it was reinstituted under my predecessor probably in 2020, and that's when Deb Black was hired in that role. And so, yeah, it has been a back and forth thing. I guess where my head lands, structurally, it is of benefit to us as a district to have somebody that is a superintendent credentialed. And so there's a gain for us in terms of just having that. So, for example, if I'm out of town or unable to perform duties, she could sit here and run board meetings with you. She could, all of those things, which right now, the only other person in the district who I could turn to might be Andy Corman, because he does have his superintendent certification, but clearly he's not a central office administrator.
Right. Any thoughts on that? Question? Awesome.
I have misgivings, I'll just look at that.
Do you want to
Not,
go to, not tonight? Okay.
not tonight.
Okay, that's fine. Head into discussion items. Anyone receive any correspondence? Okay. The next item we have is superintendent evaluation. I asked to put this on in the same vein I asked in the last meeting for us to add it, just so we can talk about the process a little bit in public. So we're pretty close. Dan's done a great job creating a draft of our response to Todd's narrative, and I think we're really, really close to finishing it. Dan did want to have another non-public to just finalize a few tiny areas in it. So we'll do that tonight, if that's all right with everyone. And then, in all likelihood, we'll provide it to Todd a few days or a week before the next meeting, and then probably go into non-public to discuss it with him after that meeting. That works with everyone. Great. And because we were light on agenda items, no. Todd also brought up some really interesting things in our agenda setting meeting about the legislation, and we thought it might be a good opportunity
Sure.
to talk about that.
Well, actually, as it happens, I was at a legislative review meeting at the state level on Friday, and there were just a number of, the New Hampshire legislature is a very unique body with a very diverse range of issues that are discussed in it, and there are a number of things that are
Such a kind way.
Who's someone's running for office himself, apparently.
but there are a number of potential, and actually, the memo that I have here of just the review is only a tiny sliver of all of the legislation that's out there that has the potential to have impact on Newmarket school system. And so what I attempted to do is kind of give you some of the ones that seem to be the ones that are getting the most either publicity or traction. And so let me just run through some of them with you. One that you probably saw in the news is HB 1473, which is a bill this is going back to the uniqueness of the legislature. One of the things that does often happen in the legislature is people will have an individual experience with something, and that will manifest itself by a bill being proposed. It gets a lot of attention. This one seems to be in that category. A bill proposed to basically make it so that you could, basically eliminating all SEL programming in schools. And there's been a lot of debate about it. I don't know that it has a lot of traction, but certainly from a school district perspective, from a mental health perspective, and from a perspective of trying to fully implement the vision of a graduate, there's a lot of non-academic skills that we want to strengthen with our kids, and that is depending on how you define SEL. Those are SEL things. So the current proposal involves basically anything that involves using money, either state, federal, local. If it were to pass,
Private.
we would not be allowed to do it. I would tell you there's a lot of educators that are concerned about it because I think it does. I think we all know there's a mental health crisis in this country, and the ability of educators to talk about things like resilience and empathy and support kids, in some of the struggles they're having, is really important. So that's just out there. I just want to suggest that to you. Another bill that looks like it's going to pass. I think it's headed to the Senate and then the Executive Council. HB 1665. Basically, it's increasing the threshold for eligibility for education freedom accounts. Those are accounts that individuals can set up to access public funds to pay for non-public educational experiences, whether it be a private school or even homeschooling. Currently, there are 4,500 kids in the state that are accessing that, and it's roughly costs about $23.8 million. With the proposed change, they're expecting it will increase eligibility pretty dramatically, so that over 60% of kids in the state would be eligible under the new guidelines, and they're expecting potentially as much as 66 million. And one of the questions I have been asked by community members is, what is the impact that will have on Newmarket? And it's really hard to quantify that because obviously there's an education trust fund that pays for education. Decisions have to be made on what the funding is, and if there are an infinite number of dollars available for public education, there would be no impact. But we need to keep an eye on it because it could have impact on us. Probably the thing, if I were going to point out, obviously when a child who's not in Newmarket is in Newmarket chooses to do something else, that daily membership is lost. So minimally, it's for every child that would be a Newmarket student, it's $4,100, but it's hard to quantify that in a real way. So anyway, so there's that. I just want to mention that one to you. And you can stop me at any point if you want to talk about any of these. These are all things that I've been sort of paying attention to and tracking. And
You don't have anything nice to say? I'll say anything that's ringing in my mind
Oh,
for
that's
some
true.
reason.
Okay.
I
don't
know,
why.
me too.
The next one is it's called the Sexual Education Instruction Bill. It's HB 1185, and basically what it's doing is it's really narrowing the definition of what's considered sex education and requiring it be taught by a registered nurse, which ironically they're the one of the few employees in schools that are not educators. Right now, most sex education is taught by health teachers and so forth that are certified educators. And so that's under discussion. For us, that would definitely change our ability to educate our kids. I mean, one of the places that a lot of people lose sight of is there's like the sex education in the health classroom, but then there's also the other areas where the topics come up, and certainly biology, for example. If you can't touch on those topics in biology class, it's going to be awfully hard to teach about human anatomy and reproduction. So anyway, so those are just some of the social bills. Are there any questions, thoughts, reactions on any of those? That
Do you, and this I'm sure you can't, but the education freedom accounts, since the 5,000 is more than we get per student, Can people apply for that and give the money to their local school?
I don't believe that is possible. No, you have to, there's a whole process you go through, and there's a production of receipts and so forth. So there's an accountability factor there. So basically, it's for,
We should open a private
You-
wing of our school that we fund.
it goes to homeschooling families can access it to use for, membership to the Museum of Science, things of that sort.
You can get that free at the library.
Materials, like buying materials of various sorts. Could be, signing up for courses at some local center, whether it's like the Odeon Point Science Center or something like that. You can also use it for tuition for private school. So it's fairly flexible. But again, I think where public educators, and frankly, the public educators I talk to value choice very much. I think where we get worried is where's the money going to come from? Because what's happening to a lot of us, and Newmarket is not, our costs proportionally are going up because, like we talked about, special education costs, typically speaking, those are still being borne at the local level, but you're having fewer students and resources taken away. So there's a higher burden, if you will, on that, but you're losing. So, but again, if there were an infinite amount of money available for education, I think you'd find a lot of people be very supportive of the concept. It's just there's only so many dollars to go around, and where's the money going to go? Which leads me to all the other funding. I'm sorry, Phil, you want to?
Are families allowed to use education freedom account money for private schools outside the state of New Hampshire?
I don't think so. I think it's just for New Hampshire, isn't it?
I'd have to,
I don't know.
Yeah, I
I
don't.
thought it was just New Hampshire.
I think also, so for most of the population of New Hampshire, that's not
Not practical.
possible, not practical, right?
Right.
Like, we happen to live in an area where, like, there's options, we're closer to the borders, but.
Yeah, I just didn't know the
It's
answer to the question, because I'm,
That's a good
I
question,
mean,
but
an interesting thing among many about it is that short of a few charter schools, I haven't really seen any evidence that the creation of this program has led to an enormous expansion of the number of seats available in private schools in the state of New Hampshire. Like, nobody's building new private schools, which is a thing you might expect,
I mean, I
possibly.
think the amount isn't enough to put someone through a private school.
It isn't, but
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
but it would, potentially it lowers the bar for somebody who could almost afford a private school but not quite, if those seats were actually available or were being made available by more private schools being opened, which is the thing that at least I haven't heard of that being the case yet. Again, you had a few charter schools that came along to some degree of success or other.
Yeah, I mean, but charter schools, EFAs don't apply to charter schools.
They
Charter
are-
schools
they
have
are
their own
different.
entity, and
Yeah,
like, this would like go towards, I think even with if the income threshold passes, which is, again, like only a very small percentage of proposed bills in the state of New Hampshire ever pass,
Yeah.
right? Like very small, but so I'm not opining on the potential passes. But with the income threshold as it currently sits, like, I don't think that it really affords a lot of individuals, they're not on that cusp of like almost can
Yeah,
afford.
there's
It's
very few boundary
very,
cases.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
and I think that's because whenever there's a bill being proposed, they look at the fiscal impact, and one of the things that makes it impossible to actually pin down the impact is until it happens, you don't know what choices people are going to make, because it is sort of on that margins, and if 63% of all public school kids could be eligible for it under the new standard, what percentage of those families are going to say, this is an alternative I want for my kid that I wasn't able to get before? And I think you don't know that until it happens.
Right, I mean, it's a twofold thing. One, I mean, this is not gonna make a real difference in anybody's ability to afford Phillips Exeter
Right.
at $50,000 a year. But if, I just don't know what the supply-demand balance is like if there are private schools that are more modestly priced
Right.
Yeah,
anywhere in the state.
there are, but there's also like the capacity challenges that they have,
Right,
right?
yeah.
Like, would they like, given the demographics of an area and the economics of an area, like, as we are aware, right, it's not like a linear relationship. You get one more student, then like
Yeah.
the cost, right? It's like stepwise. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, all of a sudden you get so many, you gotta open a new classroom, and you gotta, like, and there's facilities requirements, and there's like, I'm not sure you're gonna see a flood, should that pass, of people. There's certainly the potential, right? It changes the potential for a lot of outcomes, but I would say much like, Learn Everywhere, education for your accounts, like, have been used, but not, like, I think, in this, like, demonstratively, like, large amount thus far.
Yeah, that's
It's probably
4,500 kids.
It's probably not likely to change the amount of people that homeschool really in any given way, because 5,000 is probably not gonna shift someone to say, okay, I'm not gonna work, I'm gonna stay
Yeah,
home.
$5,000. I think what we've seen is people who already were in those positions,
Yeah.
leverage them
Yeah,
for the fund.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that's probably more likely to be the scenario you're looking at, is families that are already in private school that now can go back and say, wait a minute, okay, now I'm eligible. So that's the part, it's hard to pin down. But it certainly has the potential to be, again, it's all part of the big discussion, which that's what the state is gonna have to wrestle with. In fact, the Conval lawsuit that was, I guess you could say settled, but it's still being litigated, a decision was reached on it by the court, did lead to an awful lot of funding-related legislation that's out there, and there's a whole wide range of things. I'll just run through some of them. HB 1583 proposed raising the adequacy to $10,000 per kid starting July 1. And that's I mean, I think most people would say that'd be great, except that it does mean the state has to generate an extra $811 million to do it.
Some of
So
which will be local. anyways.
so it's hard to know what that would entail. So now there's been, within the committee that's looking at it, they're talking about dropping it down to 4,400, which is obviously quite a substantial drop from, so you're talking,
Used today.
so it is one of those things, like, okay, here's the ideal, but here's what we are gonna do. So, again, I suspect there will be some tinkering with the adequacy formula, because it has to be, because the courts have said it has to be changed. But I'd love to think we're gonna get that much more state aid. I don't see that. I think some form of in fact, there's a bill that I didn't list here that involves just sort of retooling the statewide property tax, because that's actually part of the thing, is that's unconstitutional too, and like basically telling local communities that they have to fund more. So it gets to the same point. So anyway, that's 1583. One that actually is, I was talking with Erica about this, 1656 might have more legs. It actually tries to tackle it through the lens of special education services. Doesn't change the adequacy calculation, but then it does expand adequacy aid based upon the number of special education students they have. And there's a whole formula that they do, so it ranges anywhere from an additional $2,100 per kid up to $27,000 per kid. And that might actually be, it'd be a significantly smaller amount than the previous, but it might actually result in more revenue coming into Newmarket, depending on how that floats. But something to keep an eye on. Another one, this actually has been floating around in Concord a while, but it's actually looks like it's probably going to get to a place where at least the legislature is going to vote on it, and that is the CR 12, which is a constitutional amendment proposal to change the definition of cherish. It's interesting when you look at the New Hampshire Constitution, the word cherish is used in lots of different contexts, and currently the definition is the 1784 definition that was the original framers, and so this involves trying to expand the definition, because one of the arguments in why the state funds public education is the cherishing of our children and youth and all of that. And so to broaden the definition of cherish might then change the obligation of the state to have to do that. So, but it would be, the only way to do that would be through a constitutional amendment. So in order for that to happen, the legislature would have to vote 60% to do it. And then you'd have to put it out, and at all town meetings would be instructed to have a vote on it. And if 66% of the state said yes, they'd change the Constitution. Now, that's a pretty indirect way to get to it, but it does sort of change the standard of like what is considered adequacy in a kind of indirect way. And then there's another, one of the things that I have to say is a bit of a struggle sometimes. One of the things that happens in the legislature is there are lots of bills that potentially have impact on curriculum and standards and stuff that sort of come from all different directions, and it's hard to really reconcile what does it mean until you're told, do this. But 1691, basically, it's another tact on the definition of adequacy and what is considered required curricula, and trying to broaden the definition. And so they're basically ELA, reading, math, science, social studies, and then attention should be given, and it lists all the arts and all of those kind of things, trying to make the definition bigger, so when you talk about adequacy, you're talking about more. And then the last one, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this, because this is the one that Mike Cahill has been working, SB 443. They're looking at building aid. Right now, what it looks like is going to happen is that there's probably going to end up being about $50 million in the next 2 years, $50 million each year, towards building aid. And where Mike Cahill has been involved and why it relates to Newmarket is trying to introduce the concept of retroactive building aid. So trying to get $5 million of that $50 million to be awarded to the various school districts, Newmarket being one of them, that took on a major bond project during the moratorium on building aid funding. And in fact, Mr. Cahill sent a letter directly to Governor Sununu and sent the Newmarket School District draft warrant, warrant Article 3, the capital improvement plan, sent him a copy of our capital improvement plan, and was highlighting that, you know, that's the kind of thing that this aid would help fund potentially. I'm going to be honest with you. I hope that something happens. I am not going to hold my breath. You know, I think when people are talking building aid, they're talking about new projects, future projects. So, anyway, those are just some of the, and there's millions more. There's a lot going on up there in Concord, but I think probably the message I want you to hear is there's a lot going on, and something's going to change for us. And I'll keep you posted as we learn more.
This is really useful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right, next item on the agenda is to accept the gracious donation from the NCEP to the Newmarket High School for the Great East Music Festival, $750. Thank you very much. I don't know how much money per year they give, but it's a lot. That's 5:53. We'll open and close the floor for public comment. Seeing no members of the public here. And we'll head right into action items. We have second reading and approval of the superintelligent superintendent evaluation.
Sort of intelligent superintendent.
Evaluation additional materials, CBIR, and we have graduation requirement revision, IKF. We've seen before. Does anyone want to discuss those anymore? No? Okay. So with that, I'd seek a motion to approve both CBIR and IKF.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, Bill, second by Dan. I've already asked for any discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Passes. Seek a motion to approve the February 1st, 2024 minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Dan, a second by Amy. Any discussion, corrections? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Manifest, if we can get a motion on that.
I move that we approve the manifest in the amount of $880,082.46.
Motion by Phil, can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Amy. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 We have a environmental services grant for lead remediation. Did you want to talk?
Yeah, why don't you may recall last summer during our routine lead screenings, we discovered a small number of water sources in our two schools that did not meet the new standard for lead content. And so we needed to remediate those, and thankfully there was a grant plan available. In fact, I was just talking to Dave Riley today, and we've gotten word that we are 100% good. We've been able to remediate everything. So the $7,000 grant allowed us to do all that work. It involved a lot of changing out of faucets and things like that.
I'd seek a motion to accept the DES grant.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Dan, seconded by Amy. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Amy, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Aye, sorry, I didn't say it, that's why.
I assumed you would, but,
I was dazing out there.
all right. Believe it or not, well, I guess because of the weather, we have some spring coach nominations. They're all returning coaches. Did you want to list them out real quick, Todd, or?
Sure, I can. I Stan Jerkois. Did I pronounce that correct?
Jerkowick.
Jerkowic, thank you.
No, what? It's turquoise. I'm 100%. He's been my coach for 3 years.
I'm gonna go with Sean.
All right.
Stan
Unless
Jerkois.
I've been pronouncing it wrong.
He's my neighbor. I thought I had it, but I don't.
Oh, now I'm nervous. I gotta ask him.
Okay, what's your last name? Stan Jerkois for varsity baseball, Chris Day junior high baseball, Todd Berry varsity softball, Megan Suvanasinghe JV softball, Dave Burke junior high softball, Blake Neri varsity outdoor track, and Silas Richards assistant varsity outdoor track.
All right, seek a motion to approve those nominations.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Amy, second by Phil. Any discussion?
Just thank you to everybody who volunteers to do this. It's a lot of long hours and probably not a lot of thanks, so
Sure.
really appreciate it. Sorry, Stan.
Dan, please call in. Let us know.
I'm sure he's watching right now.
Oh, he is.
I mean, we don't even call him Coach Jerkois. Call him Coach Stan. So I mean, I never really say his last name, but now I'm double.
I just remember that away game you guys played that was on TV, the way the announcer was just murdering everyone's name left and
Oh,
right.
it's terrible. I've been called Scene Vincent one time. Yeah.
It should be like the easiest of everyone.
Yeah, it's not even that difficult, but apparently that's what some people think my name should be.
All right, we do have a motion on the floor. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. I know, right? We do have a non-public meeting, and we will go into that, and we will not be returning on air, Channel 13. Thank you very much. So seek a motion to go into non-public pursuant to RSA 91.3A3 to Roman C.
It's not even
Roman,
6 o'clock.
wow, letter C.
So moved.
Something or other. Thanks, Dan.
Second.
Second.
Motion by Phil, second.
Motion by Dan.
Motion by Dan, second by Phil. Wow, I'm even writing it correctly. All right, roll call vote. Gary Swanson, aye. Dan Smith,
Aye.
Amy Tilton,
Aye.
and Phil Nazaro.
Aye.
With that, we are in non-public session at 5:58 PM.